October 29th, 2024, Wednesday. My manager asked me to stay behind after the sales meeting. Through that point in 2024, I generated nearly $2.9 million in roofing sales revenue, 164 contracts closed, named top of the quarter twice. It was my best year in 3 years of roofing sales. By the end of that meeting, my pay got cut in half and I was sentenced to mandatory 7 a.m. daily training starting the next morning. The following week, I closed 9 deals at a 90% close rate, $138,000 in revenue. And when I sat down Sunday evening to run my weekly review and look at those numbers, I wasn't excited. I wasn't vindicated either. It felt like it was just another week of work. That reaction didn't happen because I'm wired differently. It happened because of what was already running underneath my income long before that Wednesday ever arrived. If you've been in this industry any length of time, you already know that something is going to come for your compensation at some point. A new owner, a restructured pay plan, a demotion you didn't see coming. What you don't know until it actually happens is whether your financial foundation absorbs the hit or whether you're going to feel it in every bill you have. This is the story of what it took to not feel it. Now, before I take you into that room, you need to understand what that year looked like because the numbers are the whole context. Through October, I generated $2,876,820 in total revenue, 264 contracts. My average win rate across the full year was 43.8%. Q2, I was top of the quarter. Q4, the quarter that included the demotion, was also top of the quarter. But here's what those numbers don't show you. I was in full marathon training at the same time. I ran the San Diego Marathon with my wife in June. We went to Lake Tahoe in January, Cozumel in July for my birthday with the family. I was also raising $10,000 for St. Jude while doing all of it. And through every single one of those months, I was directing 60% of my income towards one goal, paying off the house. Sit with that for a second. 60% of every paycheck toward a single debt payoff goal while doing all of that. Not occasionally, every month, while traveling, while training, while closing deals, working 12-hour days, and setting personal records. That kind of commitment doesn't run on motivation. It runs on structure, on a system that makes the right decision automatically before you get a chance to second guess it. And that's exactly what I built in the year leading up to that Wednesday meeting. So let me take you back into that room. Normal weekly sales meeting, sales process review, company updates, the usual. When it wrapped up, the manager asked me to stay behind. The owner was in the room too. And I want you to understand what that combination felt like in the moment. I've been part of that journey from almost the beginning. First as a business analyst helping shape processes, then moving into sales. I respected him and believed in what we were building. But when you've been working at a startup long enough, you learn the patterns. You learn how fast people disappear. So when the manager and the owner were both sitting there and the meeting was suddenly just the three of us, my stomach completely dropped. I thought I was getting fired. And I asked them point blank, am I being let go? The manager said no, and that's when something shifted in me. Not relief, something closer to disrespect. Because if the answer was no, why was the owner sitting there? I found out later he hadn't even been told what the meeting was about. He knew I was one of the top guys in the company. He was right. He just hadn't been told what he was walking into. Here's the context that made it worse. The last formal sit down I'd had with the manager was well over 6 months before that day. No ride-alongs despite them being promised, no performance check-ins, no feedback or concerns raised to give me a second chance to respond. Just, your pay's been cut in half, you're in 7 a.m. training starting tomorrow, indefinitely. Now I'm going to be honest with you, I felt completely disrespected when I walked out of that room. Not by the decision itself, but by how it was handled. And that feeling stayed with me for about a month, which is not normal for me, but it was real. And here's where it gets really interesting. The next morning, I showed up at 7 a.m., sat through the training, and then I went out and did the same thing I always did. I followed my process. The same KPIs I tracked every single day. The same intentional approach with every homeowner I sat across from. The week of October 14th, 9 contracts, 90% close rate, $138,000 in revenue. Here's what that week confirmed for me, and I want you to hear this clearly. Process doesn't give you perfect results every single week. There were weeks earlier in 2024 where natural variance kicked in and things came in lighter than they should have. That's just roofing sales. Variance is part of the job. The manager had looked at a short-term stretch of normal variance and made a structural decision without understanding the difference between a process problem and a sample size problem. They're not the same thing. But I wasn't thinking about any of that while I was out there. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I was just being intentional with every homeowner in front of me. The results came because the process was already built. It was always there. And then Sunday came. I sat down for my weekly review. Same routine I've been doing for years. Deals closed, pipeline status, revenue for the week, KPI review against my targets. The numbers were exceptional. By any measure, it was one of my best weeks in 3 years of roofing sales. I looked at those numbers and I felt absolutely nothing. I'd had weeks like that before. I knew what I was capable of. And honestly, I kind of resented the performance a little because weeks like that don't happen on command. They happen because you built a process and run it consistently until the good weeks show up on their own. Any manager paying attention to that process instead of a short-term window would have understood that. But here's what I realized in that Sunday review. The reason I could feel nothing wasn't toughness. It was that nothing in my actual financial life had changed when they cut my pay. My life was still running exactly the way it had been because it wasn't built on that paycheck. It was built on a system that had been making the right decisions automatically for an entire year before any of this happened. But here's the real question. How exactly does someone build a financial foundation that doesn't move when their employer makes a move? Let me take you back to October 2023, a full year before the demotion. I'd made a commitment. I was going to pay off my house, $175,000 remaining at the time, on W-2 income with commission, without giving up the life I was building with my family. That commitment forced me to build something real. I didn't have a name for it yet. It was just how I managed money. But the architecture was already there. Because I was W-2 at Rhino, my taxes were handled through payroll. That's a really important distinction from a 1099 situation where you need to pull 25 to 30% off the top every check before you touch anything else. That piece was automatic for me, which meant my system didn't need a separate tax account. What it did need was 4 intentional buckets. My operating account covered all fixed living expenses, mortgage payment, insurance, utilities. That's where the bills lived. My tithing account handled charitable giving, including the St. Jude fundraiser I was running at the same time as my marathon training. My fun account covered every experience I wanted, like Tahoe, San Diego, Cozumel, later New York trip. And here's the number I want you to hear. I capped that account at 5% of my income. That's it. During a year where I was producing nearly $3 million in revenue, my lifestyle and experience category was capped at 5%. Not because I couldn't afford more, because I was intentional with it. And 5% was genuinely more than enough to do everything I wanted to do without lifestyle creep quietly eating what I was building. And lastly, at a completely separate bank, I kept a high yield savings account. That was my zombie apocalypse fund, my safety net, my emergency fund. Separate institution, separate login, built-in friction for access, the cushion that made the whole thing feel stable. Now here's how the 60% actually worked. Every week when my commission was deposited to my operating account, I moved 60% of it directly towards the mortgage. Extra principal payments, straight towards the balance. Now at first, it felt like chipping away at a mountain with a chisel. That money had one job the moment it landed, and it went immediately to work every single week. The remaining 40% funded everything else. Bills from the operating account, tithing from the tithing account, experiences from the fund account at the 5% cap. Now, when the manager cut my pay in half, the input to that system got smaller, but the system itself didn't change. It just ran with what it had. That's what I mean when I say nothing in my financial life changed. The structure was already there. The habits were already automated. The only thing that changed was the number on my paycheck. And by that point, the system was running well enough that the number on my paycheck wasn't running my life anyway. Now you might be wondering, if the system was working, why did I stay? After the demotion, I negotiated my terms. If I raised my one-call close rate above 40%, I'd get my full salary restored. I held up that end. The manager went back on the agreement and said it would only be a slight increase. I wasn't surprised. It wasn't the first time he'd done that to me. I was already done mentally. But I didn't leave that week. I didn't leave that month either. I stayed until July 31st, 2025. Not because I had to, because I made a commitment to a goal and I was going to see it through regardless of whether I wanted to be there on any given day. By early 2025, the mortgage balance had come down far enough that I made a different call. I had about $45,000 in savings. When the balance hit $21,000, I paid it off in one lump sum. Done. $175,000 of that mortgage gone on commission income. But now I'd spent down my savings and I wasn't comfortable leaving yet. I knew I was starting a business. I needed runway. So I applied the same 60% contribution rate to rebuilding that savings account. Same system, new goal. When the number hit where I needed it, I walked in that office at 7:30 a.m. on July 31st, said goodbye to the owner I genuinely enjoyed working for, thanked him for the opportunity, and walked out to chase freedom instead of checks. Here's the bottom line. It's not about resources. It's about being resourceful. I'd add one thing to that also. You can either stay ready or get ready. When the curveball comes, and it will come in this industry and in life, you might not get the luxury of preparing after the fact. A pay cut in half with no warning could have been a crisis for me. For a lot of roofing sales reps in that scenario, it would be a genuine emergency. No cushion, no floor, bills attached to a paycheck that just got cut in half overnight. For me, it was an inconvenience. Not because I was tougher, but because the system was already running before that Wednesday ever happened. Your comp plan will change. Your manager will disappoint you. A slow season will arrive at the worst possible moment. A private equity firm can buy the company and restructure everything. A slip off a roof can happen. Something can come for your income. It always does in this business. The question isn't whether the curveball's coming. The question is whether your system will already be running when it gets there. Hey, Roof Money Pros, if this story resonated with you, be sure to hit subscribe. Every week, I'm dropping new videos explaining financial concepts specifically for roofing pros just like you. If you want to build the system I use, the Feast or Famine Survival Guide is where to start. It walks through the first step of the exact framework I just described, built specifically for commission income. Links in the description. Thanks for watching, and in the meantime, keep stacking, keep building, and I'll see you in the next one.